Saleem. As I was telling Kasib, I didn't know I was going to be out 2 weeks. So I have 2 or 3 different presentations I was supposed to be doing today. So today I'm going to talk about a little bit about pantheism, Buddhism, and Hinduism. Pantheism is similar to animism, which I talked about 2 weeks ago, in that animism is that they believe that God's spirit is in everything. But pantheism is that they believe that God is everything. So God is the ants, the cow, the horse, each person. So what we believe in, I try to also kind of contrast what we believe in with pantheism. I think pantheism came from animism, and that they believed that the spirit was, initially they believed that God's spirit was in everything, and then it transitioned into believing that everything was God. Now what we believe in is everything is God's with a apostrophe S, in that everything that is outside of God is his possession. It's something that he created. So before, when there was a law, there was nothing else, and the next thing that he created was his creation. And that's the primary difference. In pantheism, the primary religion that they associate with pantheism right now is Hinduism. And that is sometimes considered an injustice, because pantheism is also, Hinduism is also sometimes considered monotheism. And that is because the Britain colonialists came and took over India, and they named it Hinduism. And all the different religions, they put them together and said they are Hinduism. And Hinduism only means the belief system of the people in the Indus Valley. So everybody together, they put them together, and they have several different scriptures. Some of their scriptures say that they believe in one God. He is unseen. You can't see him at any time. And that God, Brahman, is what probably we could consider Allah, in that he is the creator of everything. He is unseen at any time, and that is kind of parallel with Allah, and that we feel the same way. However, in the same way with other religions, it seems that their mythology, because they have a certain mythology in that they believe in different gods for different occasions. When I was first reading on Hinduism, I read about a god whose wife was captured by a god with a monkey's head, a monkey god. And he needed a different god to help him rescue his wife. Now, it's very difficult for me to determine whether they actually believe that is true or mythology. But in the idea that there are several different gods and a god needs help from another god is something that is contrary to Al-Islam. They also had the idea of karma, which we understand. And the reason I wanted to mention Buddhism in this also is because Buddha was born in India, and he kind of had the revised version of Hinduism. He had a revised version of it, and he had the Cliff Note version, I might say, of Hinduism, in that initially Hinduism had a caste system in which they said certain people were the untouchables. The darker skinned people were considered less than people that were lighter skinned. And they felt that there was, with karma, they believed that karma is obviously what you give out is what you get back. But they also believe in several incarnations. In fact, they believe Brahman is the supreme god that they have. He never changes at any time. However, they have 3 subsequent gods after that. They are Brahman, Shiva, and Vishnu. Vishnu is the one that incarnates several different times. He's come back as Krishna, Rama. He's come back as a tortoise. He's come back as a boar. He's come back as a cow. Several different things. So in karma, they believe that what you do comes back to you, and that you'll live a certain life depending on the life that you live currently. So if you live a good, righteous life, then you'll come back as a lighter person, right? But if you live a bad life, then you'll come back as a darker person. And they also believe that people incarnate into animals. So if after being a black person, you can go down into being an insect or something to that effect. And see, we believe in that what you do, you will be punished or rewarded for it. However, we have a system in which, and the same thing is in Buddhism, they have a belief in karma. what karma inculcated with reincarnation is something that doesn't beckon the person to change immediately. If you know that you're going to live forever and ever and ever, you have several different lives, what gives you the necessity to do righteousness now? When Al-Islam says that you will be rewarded or punished for this life that you live currently. It's not that you'll be punished with a different life where you can get better and better. And ultimately, Buddha he grew up, as I said, he lived in India, and he was a wealthy person. He was a prince. And he gave up his riches and became a beggar. And he withdrew from the community. The only time he came to the community was to ask for money for his livelihood. Because he saw the poverty and strife within the world, he figured he wanted to come up with a system that would help people's struggling. And that's primarily what Buddhism is concerned with, is the struggle of life and how you overcome it. And he ultimately, in Hinduism and in Buddhism, they have something called nirvana, in which they finally come to peace with the universe and everything around them. And Buddha, I think he was under a tree for about 30 years, and he finally received this nirvana, and then he transcended into something different. Now, it is said that they don't worship Buddha, but Buddha is used in their prayers. And you can also reach Buddha's status, because Buddha is a title. It means the enlightened one. It's not necessarily a god. In fact, you can be an atheist Buddhist, because it never answers the question of your creation. It never answers the question of your purpose. That's the reason I believe Al-Islam is something that they should delve into more, in that they don't have the ultimate answers to the questions that we as human beings always ask. What is the purpose of our life, and what is there after this, aside from nirvana, and then we also, another contrast I thought about was we don't practice monasticism, and meaning that we don't separate ourselves from other people and say we're going to live in the caves and we're just going to pray and never come talk to other people. In fact, you are more righteous if you are amongst people who aren't doing righteous and you are doing righteous yourself. In fact, you are an example to them. So I felt that is something that should be illuminated when we're talking about Al-Islam and Buddhism, Hinduism, and just the idea of pantheism completely. In that pantheism also, because they believe that God is everything, sometimes they have an impersonal God, and they can come up with their own ideas and understandings. In fact, in Hinduism, some Hindus people believe that Jesus was an incarnation, believe in Jesus as the incarnation, the 10th incarnation, because Vishnu officially incarnated 9 different times. As I said, he was Krishna, Rama, he was a tortoise, he was a boar, he was a fish, he was several different things. And all of those things seem like something that people don't literally believe in. When Al-Islam is something that we literally believe in. I think you have to have some kind of block, what is it called, cognitive dissonance, in order to accept that the God that you believe in needed another God to help him. In fact, Krishna, when I first read about Krishna, he was a person who was blue. First of all, he was a blue guy, and he had a flute, and he would use this flute to entice women who were married to other people. Now, I was thinking, if he is the incarnation of God, why would he be doing something unrighteous, taking another person's wife? As I said, I had 2 different criteria of what was true to determine which religion was the true religion. One of them was that God is always, always powerful, always righteous at all times. The second one is that the religion would encompass everybody. Now, for that religion, it is called the actual name of Hinduism is the Eternal Teachings. As I said, it's not Hinduism, but it's for all of those people who were in the Indus Valley. And if you believe that God created people a certain way, they also treat people a certain way if they are born with a mental or physical defect. They believe that is part of karma. That means whatever, if they were born with a third limb, or they were born and their arms were broken, or they had some kind of defect, they believe that was because of what happened to them previously. Now, when you believe in karma and you believe in reincarnation, then you will let that person be that person. You accept that that's how they're supposed to be. God made them that way. When we don't accept that, we believe that if you are born with some mental defect, we're supposed to help that person, whatever the case may be, not leave them as they are. One other thing I wanted to mention about that was, I was talking about the criteria. All right, now the second part of the criteria is that it encompasses everybody. Now, if you understand Hinduism, it means the people of the Indus Valley. And Hinduism has only affected primarily people from the Indus Valley, people from India. It has not really transcended the entire world. There are 1 billion Hindus, but they're all in India because it's 1 billion people there. And the same thing with Buddhism. There are only 1 or 2 different ethnicities that are primarily practicing Hinduism. With Al-Islam, it's something different. There was just a poll put out in America that there is really no majority of people who are accepting Al-Islam. I just told someone, when I was on my vacation, it was a guy there that was from Indonesia. I told my wife, do you understand that Indonesia has the most amount of Muslims? Most Muslims are Asians. They are not Arabs, even though the first thing you think of, even I do it, and it's because of what I see on television. When I think of Muslim, if I think of a Muslim from another country, I think of them as an Arab, when in fact they're most likely to be Asians and not Arabs. But at any rate, I had 2 books that I'm really interested in. One of them is Servant of Allah, and this other one is by this guy named Edward Blyden. And he is considered the father of Pan-Africanism. And both of these people are non-Muslims. And I just wanted to read you 2 quotes from Mr. Edward Blyden. He is a Christian, by the way. The first thing he says is, if the divinity of a religion may be inferred from the variety of races among whom it has been diffused, and the strength of its hold upon them, then there is no religion that can prefer greater claim than Islam. Of the 3 missionary religions, none has in so marked a degree overstepping the limits of race as the religion of Muhammad. And this is a Christian saying this. All right? The second thing he said was, it, meaning Christianity, has followed chiefly the migration and settlements of the members of the Aryan race. In no case has it taken possession of whole races or communities belonging to non-Aryan races. Buddhism being confined to 1 or 2 races, it would be interesting to inquire why the religions of the Indo-Europeans, whether we take them as Brahmanism, Buddhism, or Zoroastrianism, one of them, on the one, incomparable and divine, which they derive from the Shemites, seeming under their administration to transcend. Basically, I said all of that. He said it doesn't transcend the difficulties of the limits of race. As I was saying, Buddhism, he called it Brahmanism. He also calls Al-Islam Mohammedanism. This was written in the late 1800s, and obviously there were misnomers about our religion and about Buddhism. At that time, they called it Brahmanism, and Brahman was the supreme being of Hinduism. So he was talking about Buddhism, Hinduism, and Zoroastrianism. None of them transcended the limits of their religion like Al-Islam did. And the reason he wrote this book, the book was called Christianity, Islam, and the Negro Race, is he was trying to extract from Africa why Islam is so dominant there, why it's spreading so. In fact, the indigenous religions they have there, or the religions that when Christian missionaries came, they called it pagan or heathen, because anything contrary to the 3 Abrahamic faiths, or in fact the 2 Abrahamic faiths, because they included Islam as paganism. So anything that wasn't Judaism or Christianity, they considered it paganism. And they said all those other beliefs were inferior to Christianity or Judaism. But they have never exceeded the limits of race as Al-Islam has. And the Hajj obviously is a true testament to that. And at this moment, when he wrote the book, he said it was 200 million Muslims at the time, when in fact now there's almost 2 billion Muslims. So he saw it even then at 200 million, the impact of Al-Islam and its diversity. So the thing that struck me most about these religions is that it didn't really explain to me the purpose of life, and the most important thing is understanding God. In Al-Islam it says if you can't understand the Quran, if you don't have taqwa meaning God consciousness or God being God fearing, if you don't have to believe in God, if that's not a prerequisite or requisite, how can you have God consciousness? And ultimately you come to the decisions on your own about what is true and what is false, what is right and what is wrong. I was speaking to someone recently about what is right and what is wrong, right? And the person or the being that would give us justice in telling us what is right and what is wrong is somebody who is not punished, who is not harmed or benefited from our right and wrong doings. If I make the rules of what is right and wrong, then I'm going to make the rules for me and my wife and my kids and my family and people I like or people that look like me, right? And if you would do the same, you would make rules that would at least help you out. The only being that could make rules that would be just for the entire world would be a being that is outside of that system, that is not benefited or harmed from it. So if you have the idea that God is everything, then he is benefited and harmed as well by some of the things that happen in this world. And if he's an incarnation, now we don't believe in any incarnations of God. I look at it this way. Can you put an ocean into a soda bottle? Right? If an ocean can't go into a soda bottle, then the magnificence of God can't go into a human being. In fact, it can't go into the earth. It can't go into the universe. What created all of those things is bigger than all of those things. It is greater than all of those things, so it can't be incorporated inside of it. So with those incarnations that they speak of, first, they are not as powerful enough as Allah is. So what I always do when thinking about other religions is I juxtapose them and say which one is more valuable. My religion says that everyone ever has received a prophet. This other religion says that all the prophets came to the Indus Valley. Which one is more valuable? If you are not from the Indus Valley, which one would you think is the more valuable one? If my religion says that God cannot be harmed and your religion says God has a flute and he seduces people's wives, which one would you accept? It's basically that simple. In fact, just the idea of a human being God or any kind of animal, anything that is God, anything that is on earth or in this universe, it is in need of something. And if I can reach out and touch it. In the same way, I always think about Christianity just because it's most prevalent in this society. There were people who tried to push Jesus off of a mountain and he slipped through and got away. The idea that God almost died or that you could push him off of a mountain, the God of the universe that created everything, he is never vulnerable, ever, ever, ever. Not because he feels like it today, I want to be vulnerable. He is all powerful, he is all knowing, which means he can't lose some of that knowledge. He can't sometimes say, well, today, if he's immortal and he can't die, then he can't say, today I can die. It's not something that you can take off. It's something that is who he is. It can't be changed. He is unchanging. So Buddhism, in the same way, Buddhism, because it doesn't address the primary questions of humanity, I don't see it as being something that is viable. And also in the sense that it is a separation from the rest of society, when you should be encompassed in that society in order to change it. If you are not involved in that society, it's very unlikely that you will permeate and get through to the people that need it. And that is the reason why Buddhism has only had a stronghold in the Eastern societies and in Eastern religions, because it has a monastic religion in which it doesn't go out not that they don't speak to other people, because it is a missionary religion, but their practices are far and away from other people. When we mix a lot at our jobs, at our schools, or in the public. When people see that, they feel a certain way about it, But if you do it in a hill, they never see it, so they never feel that certain way. So that's what I want to talk about today. If you had any questions, please ask them.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about in the field getting stronger physically, as opposed to being in the house getting stronger mentally, which they were doing. But with them, how they were saying that the guy being, 400 years being a trash, and it just trickled down. But now, for us, it's still there, the evidence of whatever's still there, but I just feel like now we got more, we don't have the same excuse as people that were older than us did.
Absolutely.
If
we do
that's
have
the case,
more opportunity.
Right, if that's the case, everything that the civil rights and all the other stuff was just in vain. So now, we don't have we don't have that much of an excuse. So, yeah.
One thing I wanted to say about it is the understanding of the system of Hinduism, which was is over 2,000 years old. So that means it lasted for a long time. They were trash collectors for a very, very long time. So it was more than 400 years. Even though ours was different in that we were actually slaves, And the other thing I was thinking about was, you're talking about the remnants and the effects of making people bigger and stronger. When you see the NFL and you see the NBA, that's the product of breeding people to be bigger and stronger. But they also kill people who were intelligent, who could read and write. So, as I said, education is a building cycle. And if you are making someone not be able to read or write for 400 years, and you're punishing them for being able to read and write, if you see LeBron James, or you see whoever, these linebackers that are faster than people that are 200 pounds and they're 300 pounds, it's because they were connected that was a connection from slavery. If that affects us to today, then the mental aspect also affects us to today.
I got a question though. We're the original people, and then we disperse throughout the lands, and then we start taking on different features. When, in your research, when was this idea of white being more superior than black? When is the first time you seen it in any of your research?
It was, I think they said the 16th century. And this is, the funny part about that is that, before then, everybody was slaves. They would make white people slaves because the actual word slaves comes from the word Slav, which were people from European descent. So everybody was made slaves. And then what happened was in the 16th century, the elitists were the people who decided to say these are races, right? This is because, like when the Europeans came to Africa, when they came to the Americas and the Native Americans saw them there, they welcomed them with open arms because, they looked different than them, but they all knew we were one people. So they made a division between us, and this was so really racism began as classism. But what they did was use black people and brown people and say, listen, they're inferior to you, and the reason that you are middle class and poor is because of them, not because of the 1%, which is the exact same thing that's happening today. The whole idea of Republican Party, when most of them are middle class and poor, fighting for a billionaire is ridiculous, right? But it's the same thing that's happening today. Is they say the reason that has happened is because welfare, is because you're giving people free health care, because you're giving people free schooling. When in fact the reason is because 1% has all the wealth. Right? And that's the same thing that happened with racism. After the 16th century, white people couldn't be slaves anymore. They said only black people were slaves. And then they started using the Bible to say Ham and the sons of Ham were supposed to be slaves. That was always existed in the Bible, but no one used it for slavery until then. The elitists were the ones who decided, listen, no more white slaves, only black people are slaves. And because black people had already been living on farms and cultivating the land, they seemed to be a perfect fit for slavery. Like, look, they can do it already themselves. They're big and strong. They can bear in the heat. So why shouldn't they be slaves?
So by that time, black people had lost power, because when you say the 16th century, you're talking about from 1501 to 1599. So up in that area,
they didn't lose power. They were some of them were naive. Everybody was always having slavery from fighting wars, but they didn't have the slavery that we have here. They were having slaves as prisoners of war. So what they thought they were doing was selling the prisoners of war to be slaves somewhere else. But they thought, okay, they're going to end it after that. When they they didn't think that the people, the slaves' children and children's children for 400 years were going to be slaves and they were going to be raped and not given an education. Because also in Islam, well, not in Islam, but also, so you know, the Arabs had slavery themselves. They had slavery long before the European slavery.
Right.
But they didn't do it based on race. They just did it because I need you to do something for me and come
Well,
do it.
can I ask you why this Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said what he said about, yeah, he could be a black, dingy, or whatever that. So that means it was some slavery, it was some color differential slavery going on back then too, in the 7th
Well,
century.
There's also references that say that the Prophet Muhammad, well, first, I wish I didn't close this because Bilal said some things about Prophet Muhammad. And he said that, first of all, there's no word in the Arabic language that is negative towards any race. He also said the Quran doesn't discriminate between any races. He said the Quran doesn't give Muslims the right to fight indiscriminately against Christianity or Judaism. I mean, I don't know why this guy was not a Muslim. Maybe he was a secret Muslim or something, because the dude said everything that I want people to understand.
Right.
But he also said that the Prophet held black people in high esteem. I think he mentioned the hadith, I don't know about this for sure, where he says he heard Bilal's voice in paradise, or footsteps in paradise.
Mm-hmm.
And he used, and they also said that many times being a slave or being a black person was not a detriment in Islamic culture, in Islamic society, when in Christianity, you couldn't marry your way out of slavery, or you couldn't convert. If you converted to Al-Islam, you could be the president of the country. And in many instances, they were presidents and rulers of Arab people. So there was an element of racism, just like there is today. But another thing is that much of the racism was that existed, even though it was a small percentage, was of Arabs and not of the entire Muslim population. And he also said that there was also, you know, the first what is it called? The first time they saw Saleem, when the Meccans were coming to attack them, was in Ethiopia. So that's the esteem that the Prophet had on Africa and on Ethiopia. Is they said, listen, and it was a Christian leader that said, they will protect us, like they're my friends, and then they did protect them. So obviously he didn't have the negative feeling of racism that some people portray today.
Okay, so if I was to review this, I would say that that's when it became full-fledged in 1500.
In fact,
and that's when the actual Caucasians was leading in charge of blacks are inferior and we are superior.
They made it a rule. Any European country. See, also the reason I wanted to mention that thing about Christianity and its spreading only where Aryans were is because they're basically saying that white people spread Christianity, right? And the reason they spread Christianity was because before that they believed in many gods. They believed in Zeus and sons of God. So when they heard Christianity and Jesus was the son of God, they took it literally. And then what they did was they used Christianity as a means of colonialism. So they gave you Christianity and took your land. When in Islam, when they gave you Islam, you still had your own land, you had your own leaders, you had everything. They just wanted to give you the religion. Christianity wanted to actually take your land, well, not Christianity, I'm sorry. The Europeans wanted to take your religion and then give you Christianity. And that was the reason they said it hadn't encompassed other races, because they used it as a form of racism. They use it as, you take this Christianity, now you believe in this white God, and you believe white angels, and all of these things.
So that brings me to my next question. So what's a very blunt difference between the Nation of Islam and all these other religions, like Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism?
Well, do you think I'm in the Nation of Islam? Do you think I'm in the Nation of Islam?
I would think, yes, I would think so.
There's a difference between a Nation of Islam and Al-Islam. Huge difference. The Nation of Islam is a sect that began in the 60s. He was involved in it. He's going to talk after I will. He can elaborate. In fact, I asked him to do a presentation on it, so maybe he'll do a presentation in the future about it. But it's a huge difference. It's a small sect of people when Al-Islam is 1.8 billion people. Nation of Islam is a couple thousand.
When you're right now,
Yes.
Okay.
if you do.
Yes, I'm through.
Before you go, or before you start, I I invited Ryan out here.
Oh, Ryan.
His name is Ryan. He's not Muslim. Inshallah, not Muslim yet. And he just wanted to come out and get some information, ask some questions, and
I'm glad
better
you asked
understand.
that question, the man was gonna get up because you are, he's sitting here with the impression that this is like.
Right,
nation-
well, very good question.
Okay.
Very good question. Ryan, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'll try to respond to your question. As Ismael began saying, that there's a big difference between the Nation of Islam and Al-Islam. The Nation of Islam was a movement that had some religious teachings in it, but it was a kind of smorgasbord of a lot of different things. And for example, it had military drills, which brought the element of discipline among blacks, African Americans at that time. We needed discipline. So that military teaching was a part of the I hate to say indoctrination, but for lack of a better word, I use the word indoctrination, teaching of the Nation of Islam, the military element. So we actually had drills. We had general orders that we had to remember. If you were a member of what it was called the Fruit of Islam, the FOI, Fruit of Islam, you were taught drills, procedures, pretty much like you would if you were in the military. All right. We also had the idea of do for self, which came from some of our previous African American leaders who were preaching and teaching that as African Americans, as blacks, that we should do things for ourselves. We should own property ourselves. We should own businesses. We should buy from ourselves. And it had some elements of Islam, the religion of Islam, in it, but it was not the pure religion. So it was, and as Ismael said, I'll talk about this later in full length, more detail, but it was an idea that some people from the Middle East put together. It was a concept because they knew the history of blacks, African Americans, people who had been displaced, brought from Africa to America, put in slavery. They knew the whole history of us. They knew that Islam was the freedom for us. Al-Islam, not the Nation of Islam. Al-Islam was what would bring freedom to us. So they put together a scheme. And the scheme had sprinklings of Islam in it, of Al-Islam in it. Because that was the goal. The goal was to get us out of the condition that we were in as a people and bring us to Al-Islam. But because of the environment in America at that time, we're talking about the early 30s, the environment of America at that time, they couldn't just come outright and do it openly because they would have gotten killed.
Right.
The whole thing would have never gotten into America like it did. As I say, it came in, this teaching used to be, it came in like a thief in the night. So it means it came in under cover of darkness, where it wouldn't be detected by government authorities, by the powers that be in America. It was introduced in America in such a way where they didn't want the authorities to recognize that we're bringing Islam to these black people in America. Al-Islam, So they put some other stuff with it. And it worked. And really, we believe that it really wasn't them as much as it was God himself, Allah himself, who inspired those men to put this scheme together and to bring it like they brought it. And they were, so to kind of summarize it, because it's a lot to be said about that question, brother. It'll take a long time to answer that question in fullness. But the members of the Nation of Islam, as you know, the leader was a man called Elijah Muhammad, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He was the leader of that movement called Nation of Islam. But the people who brought that idea to him were from the East. They came here from the East, and they brought that idea to him. They gave it to him. His name was Elijah Poole at the time. And later it was changed to Elijah Kareem, and then eventually Elijah Muhammad. And he was the leader of the Nation of Islam. So his son, Imam W.D. Muhammad, Wallace D. Muhammad, by different names he's known, he was one of a few who were studying Al-Islam They were studying, meaning that they were studying the Quran. They were reading the Quran in Arabic language. They were learning the religion as the religion is revealed in the Quran, and it was taught and practiced by Muhammad the Prophet, praise and peace be on him. So they knew, it was a few of them, he was prominent, foremost among them, that knew that what we had been given as a teaching was not the pure religion, but it was a help.
Start off.
It was a start. It was something to get us out of the condition that we were in. You know, the pimp mentality, the hustler mentality, drug dealers, the prostitutes, the laziness, the slave mentality, all of that stuff that we had that was holding us down. That teaching in the Nation of Islam was a help, because it said, clean yourself up, for one. It had a psychology intertwined in it. The psychology was, they say they are superior, meaning white people. They say they're superior to you. Well, let me tell you who you are. You're the Asiatic black man. You're the maker, the owner, the cream of the planet Earth, father of civilization, God of the universe. So, in other words, it was reverse psychology. You know, they say they're superior. No, you're superior. You're superior to them. And within this teaching was also element that said that they came from us. They were grafted from us. That all people were grafted from the black man. And there was a man called Yaqub. Yaqub is Jacob. Yaqub is Arabic. It's in the Quran. The name is Yaqub. But in English it would be Jacob. Okay. Jacob. So he was the big-head scientist. They called him the big-head scientist. And he was the one who helped with the creation of grafting the white people from the black man. So it was a grafting process. It was said that it started out with the black man, the original black man, and then it was a grafting process that brought it to the brown, to the yellow, eventually to the white race. And then the white race was a race of devils. So like Ismael was just talking about inferior and superior. Right. So these are the inferior people. They're the weakest of the grafted from. We're the original, and they are the weakest of this strand that we've grafted from. So it's a lot of myth and psychology and reverse psychology and a lot that was in that teaching called Nation of Islam. But it's not the religion. It's not the pure religion. To have the pure religion, or to understand the purity of the religion, you have to go to the Quran. You have to study the Quran in the language it was revealed in. Now, translation of the Quran is a big help, and it's needed for most English-speaking people. But at some point, to really understand the religion in its purity, you have to go to the revealed word. And the revealed word is in Quranic Arabic language. You also have to go to the life example and teachings of Muhammad the Prophet, praise and peace be on him. You have to study his life. You have to study how he lived. You have to study what he taught, which is called hadith, his sayings, the things that he would say in conversation. People would ask him questions sometimes, and he would respond. Well, that was called hadith, his sayings, and they were recorded. That's why we say Muhammad the Prophet said so and so and so and so and so and so. It's hadith. Hadith means report. It means story. It has different meanings. But we rely on that as an authority in our religion. The way he lived his life is called his sunnah. Okay. His sunnah. That's the way he lived his life. How he actually, and uswa is another term. Uswa is a different, I don't want to get too much into technical language, but uswa is another term. But he had a way of living his life. And his life example, his life is an example for us of how we are to live our lives. So we have to study that, because that's the second authority in the religion. Next to the Quran, the next authority is the Prophet. The Prophet's life, how he lived his life, and his teaching. You know, and so it's a world of difference between the Nation of Islam is not really the religion. That's the best way I can summarize it. It is a movement. Actually, if you really understand it, it is a movement that plays into the hands of the white races. It benefits the white races more than it benefits us. But in a strange way, we got benefit out of it. Now, I hope I haven't stated any confusion.
No,
We got benefit out of it. We got benefit
Made
from
of it.
its components, the ingredients in it. It really benefits the white races. It furthers the concept of racism rather than puts down the concept of racism. You know, it adds to, it fuels, it gives more energy, more fuel to the concept of racism rather than debunking.
Because
Or-
one in power feels like they're superior to the other.
Yeah. It's like saying, okay, we get rid of the white Jesus, you put a black Jesus in front, in the place of it. So, I mean, you see what I'm
I
saying?
see what you
You put down the white Jesus, say, no, some churches did that when we had a movement called CRAID, Committee to Remove All Images that Attempt to Portray the Divine. CRAID, C-R-A-I-D. The Committee to Remove All Racial Images that Attempt to Portray the Divine. We had a movement that called under that name. And one of the things we used to do, we used to go around the country and we used to protest at certain places, sometimes in front of churches. We did it right here in Norfolk, in front of the Catholic Church downtown, St. Mary's. We walked with signs, and we held this sign up called, and it had the word CRAID on it, and explained what CRAID is, the Committee to Remove All Images that Attempt to Portray the Divine. So we were essentially saying to the Christians, we're trying to put something in their mind. Stop saying Jesus is God. Stop saying the white man is God, because he's not. And we use a reference from the Bible to support what we were saying. Don't make any graven images of God.
There's only one God.
There's only one God. And don't make any graven images of that one God. So, again, it's a lot, I could say, a whole lot. And
We just for him touch on the fact that even the Nation of Islam still exists along with us now.
yes,
Why?
they still exist. They still exist. And the leader of the movement, after the death of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, may God forgive him his errors and have mercy on him and grant him paradise. His son, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's son, was Imam W.D. Muhammad. But there was a minister, Louis Farrakhan, who is broke with Elijah Muhammad's son. He broke, in other words, most of us who were Muslims now, who were Muslims then, we were members of the Nation of Islam. Until Imam W.D. Muhammad explained to us around the time of the death, and really after the death of his father, when he really came out in full bloom, and explained to us that what we had been taught and what we had been believing in and the way that we had been practicing what we were practicing was not the pure religion.
But it was a start.
It was a start.
Okay.
It was a psychology. It was a scheme. And then he began to teach us the real religion. So Minister Farrakhan, the man who is now the leader of the Nation of Islam, he also followed Imam W.D. Muhammad. He went with Imam W.D. Muhammad for about almost 3 years, close to 3 years. And then he broke away and went back and reestablished the Nation of Islam. Because the Nation of Islam, for all practical purposes, was done. It was over with. It was done away with. But Minister Farrakhan, and he had his reasons why, he felt that he needed to go back. I need to go back and get my brothers that are still in the gutter. I need to go back and get my brothers and sisters who are still out there prostituting, selling drugs, and confused about who they are. I need to go back and help them. So he went back and he reestablished the Nation of Islam. And the Nation of Islam still exists today. Now I can tell you this too, while I'm talking. The person who is the international representative for the Nation of Islam under Minister Farrakhan was here at Juma last week. Akbar Muhammad. Yeah, I couldn't think of his name this morning to save my life. Akbar Muhammad. He is the international representative for Minister Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam. He was here for Juma. After Juma, later on that evening, after he left here, he invited me, because whenever he comes in town, he comes here, because he's actually from this area. He was raised in Hampton. He's raised in Hampton. And he travels all over the world, representing the Nation of Islam. After Jummah, he came to me and talked a few minutes, paid some compliments on the khutbah that I had given, the talk that I had given that day. And he invited me to come. He said he would be speaking at the mosque, the Nation of Islam Mosque, which is here in this city on Lafayette Boulevard. Okay, that's where the members of the Nation of Islam meet. All right. He invited me to come over. Initially, I didn't think I would be able to make it, but at the last minute, my wife and I went over. And while I was there, they actually set me right behind him. So when I came in, I sat down, I touched him on his back, on his shoulder, and he looked around and saw it was me. He said, "Thank you." You know, when he was thanking me for coming. So he got up to speak. Right when I got there is when they were just to get ready to introduce him to come on the stage and speak, which he did. He came up and he began his talk, opened up, and after the opening of his talk, he said, "I want to thank, we have Imam Vernon Fareed," referring to myself, in the audience, and I want to thank him for his presence with us tonight. And throughout his talk, he mentioned the things that I was saying in Jummah that day, in our service that we have on Friday. He was regurgitating.
Okay.
He was saying, just as the Imam said today, so and so and so and so and so. And the Imam was talking about unity, and he said so and so and so and so and so and so. And he said, by the way, he's talking to the members in the Nation of Islam. He said, by the way, he said, if you all are not having Jummah here, he said, you need to be over there with Imam Vernon Fareed every Friday for Jummah there. So he's telling them, see, he's the international representative for the Nation of Islam, which means that he travels, the man said he's been to 154 countries. That's astounding. That's amazing. I wish I had the opportunity. I travel a lot, but not that much. And I wish that I had the opportunity to travel as much as he's traveled, because everywhere you travel, you learn. He's traveled to 154. He says only 2 places in Africa that he has not been throughout the whole country. And those 2 places, he said, now I'm not sure I want to go to either one of them right now because of the turmoil that's going on. But he's well traveled and he's knowledgeable. Now, here's the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is that what he said that night in his talk, he gave a presentation. Now, much of his talk was about Roots, you know, the movie Roots, but it was the second one. Did you see the second one? Have any of y'all seen the second one? You saw the second one, the second one, the new one, the new version, Roots. It just came on about a couple months ago. It ran the whole series for about a week. All right. He was mainly talking about that one, and he was talking about the connection with the person that put it together and his connection and relationship with that person and so on and so forth. There's hardly anything that he said in that talk, in that 1 hour talk that he gave, that I wouldn't say, that I wouldn't agree with. Maybe 2%, at best 5% of his whole talk that I might have a little issue with. Now, the point I'm making is this. He knows al-Islam. He knows the religion. See, being an international representative for the Nation of Islam, when you go to countries like Senegal, where you come in contact with Muslims, when you go to countries like Nigeria, and you come in contact with Muslims who follow the Quran, they're not members of the Nation of Islam. They are following the Quran. They are following Muhammad the Prophet. You can't go over there talking about Yaqub's grafted devil. You can't go over there talking about, I'm the Asiatic black man, the maker of the only premium planet every following civilization, God of the universe. You can't go over there talking, because people will say, what is that? That's not Islam. That's not the religion. So he knows the religion. And what he teaches the religion. Last point I'll make is the younger brother of Imam W.D. Muhammad is named Ismael. And Ismael is also a follower of Minister Louis Farrakhan. He's a member of the Nation of Islam. He's the only one in the Nation of Islam that has the title Imam. All the rest of them, in fact, I don't think he even use minister anymore. But at best, the other ones who are leaders like myself, they use the term minister at best. I think he stopped them from even using the term minister. But the only one that has the title Imam is Ismael. Imam W.D. Muhammad's younger brother. By the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had this son by another woman. You know, when the scandal came out about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, people were denying it, but the fact of the matter is he did have a child by a woman out of wedlock. All right, so that boy, that man's name is Ismael, and he's a member of the Nation of Islam. He's the national spokesman for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Remember Dr. Akbar Muhammad is the international, so he's a national spokesman. So Akbar, and some things, because the camera's running, I can't see on camera, so I just say what I can see on camera. Akbar Muhammad, Ismael's responsibility is to teach the religion, Al-Islam, as best he knows it. And he speaks Arabic, because his father, did I say Ismael? Sultan. Sultan. I said Ismael, excuse me, it's Sultan. Correction. Sultan. His father's name is Sultan. And he lived in Saudi Arabia for a while, for a number of years. So he grew up in Saudi Arabia in his early years. So he speaks Arabic fluently. And he knows the religion. His role, his job, is to teach the religion. So while many of the members of the Nation of Islam are still learning those old teachings from that old concocted scheme, he is one of those who's teaching the religion of Al-Islam from the Quran and from the life example and teachings of Muhammad the Prophet, prayers and peace be on him. So we'll have time to talk more, inshallah, God willing, and I have time to share some more with you. And I think if circumstances permit, I probably can do that presentation next Sunday.
Okay.
If you're available next Sunday, come back next Sunday, and I'll go into it some more, and I'll take the with Ismael's consent, take the whole hour that we have, and I'll talk about the Nation of Islam much more. All right, and I hope that helps a little bit.
It does. It
Okay,
really does.
great.